let's start with your background, maybe even your academic background. What your education was like, what you studied, and then how you got to be doing what you're doing today.
Well, I have the educational background of the sort of person who spends his time destroying civilization, but I'm doing the opposite. I'm trying to maintain it. I have an undergraduate degree from Harvard,
Mhm.
where I studied history, and then my PhD is from Columbia University, also in history. I have done some work in economics, but I'm primarily a historian. But I did learn something very important during those years, which is that, yes, indeed, I did learn some things in the formal instruction, but I learned that if I really, really want to learn things, I'm going to have to find books that are not assigned in the classroom. If I really want to know the full story or stuff that's been left out, I have to dig around on my own. And one of the nice things about being at Harvard was that you had the largest private library in the world, and all the books that I might want to read, well, no problem. They're always sitting there on the shelf, ignored. So I was able to give myself my own private education while I was there.
Well, and I'm fascinated by the fact that Harvard, Columbia. I mean, these Ivy League institutions. But as you said, you're reading the books that other people weren't that interested in. So how did you get along in that environment? Seemingly that you have maybe more of a shall I call it a libertarian view as compared to what the kind of indoctrinated views are at these institutions. So what was that like?
Well, it's kind of like the advice I give to young people in this situation, which is to seek out the like-minded people.
Mhm.
So we had an alternative, let's say, student publication that I wrote for, and we all got to know each other, and we realized we were the dissenting voices on campus, and we helped to keep each other sane. And this is why I get impatient with people who say to you or to me that you're just preaching to the choir. Well, number one, I don't think we are. But secondly, even if we were just preaching to the choir,
Mhm.
the choir needs to be preached to.
Yeah.
I don't know any church where the pastor says, all right, I'm about to preach so the choir can go out and have a cigarette. They also need to be preached to. Like the people who were, let's say, the black sheep of the campus, we needed to be kept sane. And we did that by writing and by inviting dissident voices to speak on campus. So that was what more or less got me through it.
And history, why history?
Oh, I'll tell you the exact reason. I was actually planning to do some kind of math degree, if you can believe that. And then one day as a freshman, I was heading to the dining hall, and there was a group called the Friends of the Spartacus Youth League hawking their newspaper there.
Yeah.
And it was called the something worker, I forget what it was, a workers' vanguard it was called. And they were celebrating, I don't know, something having to do with the Bolshevik Revolution. And I thought, the Bolshevik Revolution, I mean, how do they not know all the atrocities, and that that Lenin was having people shot and by firing squads, and that there were already camps with between 50 and 70,000 people in them even before Stalin got in. Like, how do they not know this? How do they not know that the secret police under Lenin was 16 times larger than it had been under the czars? How do they not know? Maybe they just don't know.
Right.
Maybe it's a lack of knowledge, but don't worry about this. Old Woods will straighten them out. Oh, naive old 18-year-old Woods went up to that table and started talking to them, and it just seemed like no matter what I said, it just didn't matter. Doggone it. So I became fascinated with these people. Now, normal people just went on to dinner like they weren't even there. Normal people.
Right.
Not old Woods here. I'd be sitting there through dinner, and halfway through I'd be thinking, what can I say to them? And I'd run back out and talk to them. So I started reading more, and this got me more interested in history because of the history of communism. That was kind of what it wasn't my high school history teacher or any of those sorts of stories. It was dealing with these people in particular. So then I went to one of their meetings. I just had to see this.
Right.
So I went to one of their meetings. This was 1991. And they were passing around, this is absolutely the God's honest truth. They were passing around a collection plate asking for donations to help keep the Soviet Union together.
You have to be making that up.
No, that is absolutely the truth, and I am happy to report to you, Patrick, that the $12.18 in that plate did nothing to keep it.
This is great. Wow. So, but then to get a PhD in history, I mean, so you just went all in on this.
I did, because I decided I wanted to be in academia. And then eventually I decided I would much rather just be on my own as an independent scholar. And in the age of the internet, I'm able to do that. I'm able to make a very nice living, not having to deal with any bureaucratic politics, not having to deal with envious coworkers or committee assignments or anything like that. But I did want to be in academia because I liked the lifestyle. I mean, I couldn't believe I would get paid for reading books that I liked and writing about things that were interesting to me. And plus, standing up in front of a classroom. I mean, I had been in drama since middle school. So I'm such a ham. I mean, I love to do that. That's no
Wow.
problem. So it was like the perfect job for me.
Wow. So then you finished your academic career, and what did you do?
For a while I was paying off some student loans, I went and taught at a community college on Long Island. They actually paid the best of any job I applied for. I was able to really get those. It's some kind of scam going on Long Island. The firefighters, the police, they all get paid these enormous salaries. So I figure if you can't beat them, join them. So I took that salary while I was there. I started paying down my debt, and then I realized I had an opportunity to go be a resident scholar at something called the Ludwig von Mises Institute, named after the great economist Mises, who uh, was one of the most prolific and brilliant economists ever.
Mhm.
And I could go there and just work on what I wanted to work on. They knew I was a hard worker. I was churning out like a book a year,
Mhm.
a couple of them New York Times bestsellers. And so they said, why don't you come down here and you can do whatever you want, and we're going to back you. So there's no reason to say no to that. So I was able to do that. But by 2010, for family reasons, we left there and went live somewhere else. And that's when I realized I couldn't. And this, by the way, this is relevant to people now in
Right.
this day and age, wondering, what am I going to do? We got crazy economic policies everywhere. We got this crazy, unchecked so-called public health establishment running roughshod over every decent thing. What am I supposed to do? How do I protect myself against this? I realized after 2010, I was going to have to generate my own income somehow. I couldn't rely on anybody else. I was going to have to generate my own income. Now, I could generate that by running myself ragged, giving speeches all over the country, but I had young children and I didn't want to be away while they were growing up. So after I got some advice from somebody said to me, think about what it is that you're good at. Why do people follow you? Why do they like you? What is it about you that has generated, readers, a YouTube audience, blog readers? Like, what has done that? And the answer was that I would blast to smithereens the standard kind of 7th grade textbook version of various historical events. And people just loved this because the standard 7th grade textbook will tell you that the federal government is a wonderful progressive force, and that what we need is more centralization of power, and that anybody who wants power more decentralized is evil and wicked, probably supports slavery. This is about as charitable as they would ever be to anyone who disagreed with them. And so there were certain presidents we were supposed to admire. And when I was a freshman in college, one bit of advice I got was to read a book by Paul Johnson called Modern Times. And the person who recommended this to me, this is a student, said, when you get to the American history chapters, just be prepared, because you're going to find that the presidents you were told were terrible deadbeats were actually the best ones. And the ones you were told were the great saviors were terrible. I thought, okay, well, sure, I'll check this out. And I never looked at the world the same way. So I do that kind of thing. So this person said to me, you're already doing books, you're doing this and that. What if you did courses online, in non-PC US history or economics or related fields, and you made like your own dashboard university out of that? And, well, maybe, yeah, I could. So I could work from home with something that I was good at and not have to fly all over the country. So in 2012, I launched what's called Liberty Classroom. And you know what they say about new businesses tend not to last 3 years, or there's some terrible statistic about how few of them last.
Right.
9 years later, that site's still going strong because there are a lot of adults out there who feel like they suffered from what I like to call educational malpractice.
Yeah.
So it was from that moment on that I realized it is possible now that we have the internet, even with all the restrictions and the deplatforming and all these problems that are very real, it's still quite possible to make a comfortable living without having to deal with any political BS from anybody. And so I've become kind of a master of that since then.
Thanks so much for being here and watching that video. And can I ask you to please subscribe to our channel so you can find out when we're posting new content. You'll be alerted right away when we do. To share this with people you think might benefit from the information, and certainly it helps us if you like the video. So if you like what you just saw, go ahead and hit that like button. And again, thank you so much for being here with me right now.